Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 53. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here this Monday, Steelers Nation. Dave, hopefully you had a good weekend. I assume you were out there Black Friday shopping with the rest of the moms in America, fighting for that hot new toy of the Christmas season.
No, that hadn't been in our repertoire for some time now. We are very low-key people, and right now it takes all I can do to get up out of a chair or out of the bed or off the couch when laying down. So no, we're not venturing too far. We did the whole honey baked ham thing, and I think we got most of that polished off by now. I think we got some turkey sandwiches in the plans for later this afternoon, and then that should about wipe all that stuff out. But no, nothing. I've given up being around those types of crowds for a long time ago now.
Yeah, I think you and I are more the Cyber Monday crowd than the Black Friday group of people. But hopefully everyone had a nice and safe, enjoyable weekend. No Steelers until tonight, as they will finish out Week 12, traveling to, they're already in Indianapolis to play the 4-6-1 Colts, Pittsburgh 3-7. On the air a little bit later in the show, we will have a Colts guest to talk about the Indianapolis season. That'll be Jake Arthur, deputy editor at Horseshoe Huddle and writer and podcast co-host over there at Locked On Colts. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Jake Arthur NFL. And so we'll talk to him in a little bit. But Dave and I, let's start things off right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the status. Why did I say status? I felt like very British of me there. Of their injury situation. I'm still getting over a cold, so I'm still a little foggy here. So apologize for that. But two players were ruled out over the weekend. Pittsburgh having their final injury report on Saturday. Those two players are running back Jaylen Warren and cornerback Akella Witherspoon, both with hamstring injuries. Warren suffering that in the Week 11 loss to the Bengals. Witherspoon has been plagued by that throughout the year, starting in Week 3 against the Browns, and so he still continues to miss time with that. Wide receiver Miles Boykin is questionable with an oblique, and ditto with Robert Spillane, questionable with a back injury, and so that is a situation for Pittsburgh right now. So Warren out as of this recording here in the morning. No elevations made yet. We can probably anticipate some roster moves to occur later this afternoon.
Yeah, and there was no upgrades or downgrades on the injury report on Sunday. So if I had to guess, I'm going to guess that Boykin and Spillane should be able to give it a go Monday night. Obviously, we'll if not, we could see the young Mark Robinson get a helmet in place of a guy like Spillane there. But as we sit here right now, because they didn't make any upgrades or downgrades, I'm going to guess that Boykin and Spillane might give it a go. But I think we're waiting to see if Anthony McFarland, that's kind of the obvious choice here to get an elevation. I guess the only other question, Alex, would be is DeMarvin Leal going to get activated off of IR this afternoon, and is there any other kind of maybe elevation that we might be missing here? It kind of feels like the two names to watch would be Anthony McFarland Jr. and or DeMarvin Leal.
Good point on Leal. I know the Steelers have talked up his health, and it seems like he's in a pretty healthy spot. It really was a matter of conditioning and just being game ready. And so we'll have to see if the team makes that decision. And of course, if they do, a corresponding move will have to come with that. It's not an elevation the way that a McFarland would be, but certainly would expect a running back to come up with only two healthy backs. They're going to have a third. We assume that's McFarland. There are other options. There's Jason Huntley. There's the newly brought back Master Teague, but McFarland seems the most logical candidate of them all. So hopefully we'll get those answers. We will get those answers by 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Right, absolutely.
From the Colts standpoint, they had some Sunday edits in terms of their injury report, ruling out, let's see, Kwity Paye, their defensive end with an ankle injury. And as Jake will illustrate a little bit later in the show, there seems like some sort of illness, some sort of bug going around in that Colts locker room. So Kylan Granson, he's doubtful with an illness, and their top tackler, actually the NFL's leading tackler coming into this week, Zaire Franklin, is questionable with an illness as well. And so we'll have to see the status on those guys come in active time.
Yeah, there and DeForest Buckner's been on the injury report, and their other defensive tackle. I mean, this sets up for they're not there. And look, even losing that backup tight end, I think is a little bit something worth noting in this game, even though a lot of people don't know Kyler Granson overall there, but he definitely is a guy I think that sticks out on tape. But I think first and foremost, the health of that defensive front, and Ngakwe's on there and on the injury report, even though a couple of those guys I think are going to be good to go Monday night there. I think that's an area of attack right there, is try to run at that front four of theirs.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, typically it's been a really stout and strong front four, but given just the injuries and the bug going around, I think you have to attack them. They came into this game the second best run defense in the NFL, 3.8 yards per carry allowed. But when you're dealing with missing some of those pieces, or some of those pieces not being at full strength, I think you have to really test that unit early on. And Pittsburgh, has had more success in recent weeks against 4-3 teams, which is what the Colts are, against the Saints, against the Bengals. And so I think they're liking the look of that front. The tight ends of block better. Gentry did a nice job against the Bengals, for example, blocking some of those ends, and so that'll be key. But I think that'll be where you test early to see how stout that Colts defensive line looks right now.
Right, and obviously you have Mason Cole going to be able to make it back this week, and probably he hadn't been 100% in a little while, so he's definitely not going to be 100% Monday night. But I try to run the football early and often, because I don't think you want to get in any situation with Kenny Pickett where dropping them back 50 times in a game. And I think the same goes for the Colts as well, too. I don't think they want Matt Ryan back there, dropping back 50 times a game with Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt coming after him.
Sure. When you have Jonathan Taylor, they want to get their ground game going, and Pittsburgh's going to have the same mission. The Colts have been more successful doing that, but that'll be the goal for both teams Monday night. I do want to talk about this game a little bit later in the show to kind of keep the same general structure of the last podcast before the game. Sure, I want to kind of switch gears for a moment. I wrote an article this morning for Steelers Depot giving 3 reasons why, and I'm not saying I like this or I don't. I'm just saying that I think it could be a reality, something to consider for Steelers fans, of why Matt Canada may be the OC in 2023. And I don't want to ruin people's Mondays by starting with this conversation. I probably already have. Those are some of the comments that I've received, but I don't want to rule that out. I think after the first month, 5 weeks of the year, even at the halfway point, I said, this guy's not coming back next year. How do you justify that? The more I've thought about it, the more that I've seen this offense make some, granted, small strides over the last 2 weeks post-bye. I think you could make a reasonable and plausible case for Canada to return, given the player execution issues, which has very much been a problem as you've kind of gotten away from the start of the season, given Mike Tomlin's repeated defense of Matt Canada, and of course keeping him when it totally would have been justifiable to fire him, say, after that terrible loss to the Eagles right before the bye week. And just given what we assume is the contract status of Matt Canada, we don't know exactly for sure his contractual status, but based on the tea leaves and based on the things I map out in the article, we generally believe that positional coaches get 2-year deals and coordinators get 3-year deals, and Pittsburgh does not fire guys. And so it would make sense. It would be logical and consistent for Canada to be under contract through next season. So could Pittsburgh give it one last old college try? I could see that happen.
Boy, that's going over like a lead balloon this morning, isn't it?
It is.
But you make some good points in there. Why I get, and once again, this isn't you advocating it as much as it is looking at what we do. We look at all angles of this and the plausibility. So, it's hard for me to poke any holes in what you wrote with the three reasons there, because, I mean, look, there has been execution problems. And Mike Tomlin, if there was a time that Mike Tomlin was going to pull the plug on this, it would have been, you would have thought during the bye week. And he has, made it kind of clear that, there's other things involved in here, and he went even on the Mike Tomlin show, as you stated in your post on, I guess that was released on Saturday there.
Mm-hmm.
He strongly defended the flea flicker play, and really I think with good reason too, because that thing, if that pitch goes smooth back to Kenny Pickett, I think Kenny lets that thing go, and I think you got a good chance of a touchdown to a George Pickens there. And then trick plays, gadget plays in particular, they are very results orientated. And if that's a touchdown, people are saying, I'm sure the anti Matt Canada people are saying, well, that's just a lucky call there. Good thing that thing hit there, but it didn't, and it could have, though. And to hear Mike Tomlin kind of defend that, going along the lines with everything else that he's had to say throughout this process here, I think they still I don't think any decision's been made. I think you would agree with that probably at this point as well too. And look, in these final games that the Steelers have left, there are, at least looking at it on paper, there are games that I think the Steelers should be expected to be in and potentially win. And how the offense starts to play. Look, we put the line in the sand for Kenny Pickett a couple of weeks ago there, and I think one of your film rooms this past week was on Kenny Pickett and how there were some things to kind of build on, some positives in that game. And the rest of the season, look, for this team to make the playoffs at this point, it would take a modern miracle, I think. But within that, you want to see your young quarterback continue develop, your young pieces on offense continue to develop, and hopefully the defense starts playing like we thought they might be able to play had they been healthy to start the season there. And that means not giving up these explosive plays and shutting down the run, and at least give the offense a chance to compete in games to win some of these games here. So I think it's fair. It's a fair post what you wrote on Matt Canada, but there's a lot of games left here, and obviously a lot of Steeler fans at this point are saying, man, I hope he doesn't succeed, and I hope if he does succeed, it still results in them dropping some games here, because currently the Steelers are way up there in the first round draft pick selection. I think technically fifth overall, but a lot of things are going to depend on what happens. This game can impact where they stand in that first round. And then you still got multiple games left after that as well, too. So long story short, there's still games to be played. And I don't think Matt Canada's future past this year has been decided yet.
Agreed. The next 7 games will be important for him and for this offense, whether or not this offense continues to make strides, whether or not Pickett makes strides, just a general look and feel of things. But I just go back to the infrequency in which this team fires coaches. I mean, the last time they fired a coordinator was really Al Everest in 2012, right before the season began. Still don't know what happened for that to occur. Something had to have happened. But beyond that, I mean, I'm looking at Tim Lewis, the DC after the 2003 season, Ray Sherman after 1998. I mean, it just does not happen in Pittsburgh. It's always the mutual parting of the ways, they say, when contracts expire. That happened with Haley. It happened with Randy Fietner. Happened with Keith Butler, who retired, and they pushed Arians out and stuff like that. So that doesn't mean that you can't fire Canada, but it's not in Pittsburgh's nature to do so. And that doesn't even consider the argument, which I don't think is particularly strong, but it's a case to make about, do you want to give Kenny Pickett a new OC in his second year, 2 OCs in 2 years? That's less than ideal. But if the calculation to me is Canada's not the guy, then keeping him's doing more harm than the growing pains of a new OC. But you could argue that as well. This team has had, 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years. That's the run game coordinator. Do they want to have 2 OCs in 3 years? That's not good for stability, not good for consistency, not good for just general building on a kind of macro level. So Again, will it happen? Who knows? But I think we've all so many fans have just already assumed that, okay, Canada's gone. He's not coming back. There's no way. And I think there certainly is a possibility and plausibility to him being back in the booth in 2023.
You're closing in on 100 comments on that post already this morning.
The server's running hot on that article, I'm sure.
Right.
Anyway, so that was my thought there on Canada to try to ruin your Monday there, Steelers Nation. But it's an honest thought that I have. I think I've even gotten closed-minded in saying he's gone, no chance he returns, when there are some reasons why that may be a difference. I just don't want people to be shocked by that, because I think it's something that's on the table for next year. But to focus on the here and now, before we start talking about the Steelers-Colts game, just give me an overall overview of Week 12, Dave. Your thoughts on the weekend. Chicago losing, and so that's good for Pittsburgh from a draft capital standpoint. They're almost guaranteed to have a very high second-round pick with that Bears pick acquired in the Chase Claypool deal. What were your thoughts on the Week 12 that was the NFL?
Yeah, look, and they had to play obviously without Fields at quarterback, and they ended up losing that game to the Jets. Who, boy, Mike White, one game does not make but let me tell you, they were able to move. I watched a good chunk of that game on Sunday there, and they were able to move the football. Mike White did a lot of good things. But back to the Bears real quick. When you look at the remaining games that the Bears have on their schedule, they're going to be underdogs in a lot of these. They still got I think the Packers coming up. They got the Vikings. I think they got the Bills. Who else? They have in there. I think do they have the Lions again? I can't remember if I put that in there.
I'd have to check. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But they've got. Look, this is a Bears team that's probably going to lose a handful more of these games moving forward, and obviously that plays into the Steelers because of the second round draft pick that they gave the Steelers for Chase Claypool, who he had a big reception against Sauce Gardner in that game yesterday. I think in total, 2 catches for, 51 yards and a long of 31 in that game. But other than that, he's really not doing anything. They lost Mooney over there now to an injury, so that's going to impact that offense. And Justin Fields can only do so much. A lot of close games, man. A couple of games decided by 2-point conversions. That Jaguars game at the end. How did the Ravens let the Jaguars back into that thing there? And props to the Jaguars for going for it at the end, deciding to go for that 2-point conversion to try to win the game. And even that almost wasn't enough, because you left how many seconds? 16 seconds.
14, I think they got back.
Yeah, and Justin Tucker had a chance to kick a 67-yard field goal to win it. And I gotta be honest with you, when that ball came off his foot, I thought initially that he made it, but he didn't. So in the grand scheme of things, the Ravens and the Bengals are still very much in control of that division. The Bengals obviously won their game over the Titans. You had to know that was going to be a hard-fought contest. And kudos to the Browns for beating the Buccaneers in overtime on top of it there. So a lot of fun games I thought to watch overall. Boy, the Chargers-Cardinals game was interesting. That was another one that came down to a 2-point conversion in that one. The Raiders game against the Seahawks goes into overtime. Get the long walk-off by Josh Jacobs in that one overall. So it was just fun to sit back and watch some football overall there and see how things are shaping up around the league.
And even the Sunday nighter was a good one. The Packers-Eagles, the Jordan Love era. Has it started? Has Love, Rogered Rodgers in terms of, the way that Aaron Rodgers kind of took over for Brett Favre and that era began? Has that started in Green Bay? I think probably a little less so, but Love certainly looked impressive. And so I thought overall a really good week of football.
I purposely, because of Aaron Rodgers' injury and all what's going on with him, and just not having anything better to do at the time, I watched that post-game press conference there, and Aaron Rodgers isn't going to go away quietly here. He's already, and he's doing things that Favre, you don't like your players to kind of reveal too much about injuries, but boy, they called it an oblique injury with Aaron Rodgers, and even after the game, their head coach kind of stuck with that story there. Well, Aaron Rodgers, not too long into his press conference, let it be known it was a rib injury.
Felt pretty clear, yeah. He took some shots.
Yeah, and kind of pulling a Brett Favre to let everybody know how bad it was. But then on top of it, you're going to try to work through it. And Aaron seems to think that as long as the scans come back, kind of in his favor on today, he's going to be back out there. And he's not in no way thinking about giving way to Jordan Love, who Jordan Love, by the way, in that short time that he was in the game, I don't know how much you watched of it. He looked pretty kind of that's the best Jordan Love that I've seen. And obviously we haven't seen a lot of them so far there. But boy, what about that Christian Watson over there on Tyler Wise was very, very high on that kid. And he's it seems like he's scoring a touchdown every game, if not two of them there for them. And the Packers running game, still seems to be pretty stout there. They're obviously, really, for all practical purposes, out of things right now. But they made that game a lot closer than what it looked like it would be a few minutes into it last night.
To tie Green Bay into Pittsburgh, I get a very much a Martavis Bryant vibe with Christian Watson, just this freaky height, weight, speed guy, pretty raw coming out. Watson, North Dakota State FCS kid, but just a touchdown machine. I think Watson has 6 touchdowns on 28 receptions, and Bryant had 8 touchdowns on 26 receptions his rookie year. Didn't play the first half of that season, so obviously, hopefully off the field, Watson stays on the straight and narrow better than Bryant did, and I imagine that he will, but I just kind of get that vibe. But that touchdown that he had, which just turns on the afterburners and runs away from everybody, just shows you that's a special talent they have up there in Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does remind you back, because I think Martavis Bryant, his rookie season, it was like, I don't know, what was it, week 7 or week 8, he made his debut. What was it, against the Texans I think?
Yep.
And really, I mean, just at that point, people were wondering, well, why was he under wraps for so long? Didn't he have a knee injury? Was kind of slow picking things up, I think, originally that rookie season. But once he did hit the field, man, it looked like, man, where has this guy been all season there? So Watson is going to be a fun player to watch moving forward for the Packers.
For sure. All right, Dave, it's a good recap of week 12. Let's take a pause here and come back with Jake Arthur to bring it back to Steelers Colts, getting you ready for Monday night. Jake is the deputy editor for Horseshoe Huddle and co-host for one of the Locked On Colts podcasts. You can follow Jake, and you should, on Twitter at Jake Arthur NFL. We'll take a pause and come back with Jake.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Monday morning. It is the final day of week 12 of the 2022 NFL season. It is Monday Night Football tonight with the Indianapolis Colts hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that really should be interesting and entertaining. Both teams really need to win this game to keep whatever hopes they have of maybe running this thing out a little bit longer overall here. So with that, we have a first timer on the show. We have Jake Arthur. Jake is the deputy editor of Colts on FM, and he co-hosts the Locked On Colts podcast. You can, I think, read a lot of his work over at si.com in the Colts section over there. So with that, follow him on Twitter at Jake Arthur, ARTHUR NFL, all one word, Jake Arthur NFL on Twitter. With that, Jake, good morning. Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Did I get the intro right there? Jake, tell us a little bit about what you're doing over there real quick.
Yeah, you nailed it, brother. So I'm the deputy editor over at horseshoehuddle.com. That is Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated's Colts website. We do a lot of stuff over there, head to toe Colts stuff. Pretty much anything you might want to know about the team, we've got it. We've got some really talented guys over there. We've got a couple of really good film guys. So it's definitely stuff we like to put out. And then as for Locked On Colts, some of you guys may be familiar with Zach Hicks. That's my co-host. And that's a Monday through Friday show. And again, just basically the audio video version of what we're doing over at Horseshoe Huddle.
All right, gotcha. All right, obviously an important game, for both teams tonight and on the national stage on Monday Night Football here. Let's start first, Jake, with This Colts team obviously has gone through the coaching staff change here. Out is Frank Reich, and in is Jeff Saturday. When that move was initially made to move on from Frank Reich, and a few days later we find out as Jeff Saturday is going to get the job there. What was your initial thoughts on those two moves?
Yeah, initially, so I wasn't really surprised that Frank got fired. I mean, you kind of knew it was going to at least happen by the end of the year. I was a little surprised, I guess, that they did it in the middle of a season. Jim Irsay has never done that before in his tenure as the owner. But I guess there's a first time for everything. So it wasn't super shocking because the Colts had just been going on a spiral. They were playing really uninspired football, and it just seemed like there was no spark to them whatsoever. However, I assumed the interim coach would be one of the guys on staff that had experience before. They have Gus Bradley's the defensive coordinator. He's been a head coach. Scott Milanovic has even been a head coach in the CFL. John Fox is a defensive consultant with the Colts, assistant over there. Even Bubba Ventrone, their special teams coordinator, is a guy that will be getting head coaching interviews. He's a real up and comer. So they had options. So to pull in a guy from outside the building who the players have no ties to, really only the offensive lineman knew him, just kind of in passing. And so I thought that was really curious. I was pretty critical of the move because, Saturday knows football. He's been a definite locker room guy and was just awesome as a player. But his head coaching experience ended at the high school level. And so I was kind of critical of it for the players. How do you tell veterans like Stephon Gilmore, DeForest Buckner, whose season seems to be kind of washed away, that your new head coach is a guy you've never even met before in the middle of a season? So that was real curious. I've toned down on it a little bit. I think he has definitely brought them that spark they were missing. He's kind of gotten something out of a lot of guys and turned things around. They beat the Raiders, which, if they were going to have a game to do this, doing it the week of the Raiders, I guess, was a good way to do it. And they really should have beat the Eagles last week. They controlled that game for about 58 and a half of the 60 minutes. And then it was just a little too much Jalen Hurts at the end of it. And so I think, surprisingly enough, bringing in Jeff Saturday has made this Colts team more of what they could be potentially, which is still an average team. But you would think they're going to take care of the kind of middling, lower level teams like the Raiders, potentially like the Steelers, and be competitive against the better teams like the Eagles.
What obviously only 2 games since Saturday has taken over as head coach here. What have you noticed, if anything, schematically, or in other words, what got this team to where they were, and where are they now in the 2 game sets? Is it just mindset, just as you kind of state, look, this is a team, we know just Jeff Saturday's history, and it's out there. This guy's going to want to run the football, and the biggest change, I guess, since he took over is Matt Ryan goes back up under center there. Jonathan Taylor had been dinged up early in the year. He looks healthy and great right now. Is it just kind of the mindset that's kind of changed with this team overall? Because it feels like it'd be very hard to change schematically a lot of things, especially just 2 weeks into this thing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly it. I think they're playing a little bit more up to their potential because on paper, in the preseason, this team was a popular playoff pick, and they're not that team that we thought they were going to be, but they are at least playing a little bit more up to their potential. Schematically, I don't think things have changed drastically because their offensive play caller, Parks Frazier, he didn't have experience calling plays in a game setting before. But he was the closest thing on the staff to Frank Reich that they had. He was Frank's right-hand man since 2018. So no one knew the system that was already in place that the players already knew as well as Parks Frazier has. So things haven't changed drastically. I think Matt Ryan being back in there is good for the morale of the locker room. because everyone in there does love Sam Ehlinger, but they know that if they're going to win any games or get anywhere and salvage their season, they probably need the veteran like Matt Ryan in there. And the offensive line has played a little better, which was going to be critical in order to put Ryan back there. Because for my money, part of Ehlinger being back there was if the line was going to be as terrible as it was, then you might as well have someone who can move around back there. So against the Raiders, it was a lot better offensive line performance. And then even though there were some sacks last week against the Eagles, it was still a little better than we'd seen earlier in the season. It was at least your young guys that were really getting beat up. Bernard Ryman at left tackle, Will Fries at right guard. Those were the guys that were making the big mistakes, the guys you would expect to. It wasn't just huge drastic errors from Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and Braden Smith like we have been seeing at points throughout the season. So I think at least the veterans, you're getting better play out of the veterans now under Jeff Saturday than we had been seeing previously with Reich.
But before Alex jumps in here, what would you say was the number one downfall for Frank Reich? Because you see him on the Hard Knocks and just knowing his history. Was he just too nice of a guy, or what would you say was his number one downfall?
I don't want to speak for the locker room and say he lost the locker room, because I don't think he did. Those players in there still absolutely loved him. However, it's hard to think that the message didn't just become stale. Like the team I had mentioned, they completely lost their spark dating back to the last couple weeks of even last regular season against the Raiders and Jaguars. This team has come out looking totally lifeless. Like, not even just that they were losing because the other team was the better team, but they never even stood a chance in a lot of these games. And there were some huge points of emphasis this offseason they wanted to avoid. They were tired of getting kicked around in the division, especially to Tennessee. They wanted to kind of exercise their demons of this weird curse they have playing in Jacksonville. The Patriots last year, they thought they should have demolished it. I mean, they won against New England last year, but they thought they should have killed them. And then they came out and just looked lifeless in that game. They got out and started terrible against the division this year. They, of course, got shut out in Jacksonville. The Patriots pummeled them. So nothing they wanted to accomplish was getting done, and they looked so pitiful in doing it. So something just had to change, and I just don't think they were willing to wait for the end of the season to see it change.
Jake, to go back to this Colts offensive line, I think as Dave mentioned earlier, this team has allowed 40 sacks this season as a collective. Is that more on the O-line? Is that more on quarterbacks? I know numbers went up when Ehlinger was in there. And what would you say is the weakness of that Colts offensive line? Is it more of the tackles, more of the interior guys?
So it's honestly a little bit of everything. So I think early in the season, the offensive line play kind of shell-shocked Matt Ryan. It kind of turned him into a guy that he hasn't been throughout his career. So they should have never gone into the season with Matt Pryor as the left tackle and Danny Pinter as the right guard. Don't get me wrong, those guys have played good football for them previously, but they just did not have adequate competition against them in training camp. That's kind of a fault of Chris Ballard there, is just crowning guys the winners of a position and not giving them ample competition. So they never should have entered that. That was a disaster. Pinter was just bowled over, and Matt Pryor has been one of the worst offensive linemen in football this year. They've tried a bunch of different offensive line combinations. I think they finally got the right five out there. They're going to have to live with Ryman and Will Fries' growing pains. They are young guys, but I think that's the right five to get out there. Those guys do have potential, and that's just what you're going to have to live with when you have young guys out there. But at the same time, Matt Ryan has also begun holding on to the ball too long. He doesn't seem to see certain guys that are open, which that has led to sacks. And, Ehlinger, when, the brief time he was in there for a couple games, all young quarterbacks seem to hold on to the ball too long, especially guys that can move around with their legs. So it's been a bit of everything. I think they also miss having a really high quality blocking tight end like Jack Doyle previously.
I love
Mo
that
Alley
guy.
Cox has
That
been
guy.
a great
I love
blocking.
that guy. That
Yeah.
guy's one of my favorite guys when he was in the NFL.
He would have been. He's got the Steelers attitude through and through. But they thought Mo Alley Cox was going to be that guy because he's been a great blocker throughout his career, but he just hasn't really been it. You know, you just can't really replace Jack Doyle, and Mo Alley Cox hasn't even quite come close to that. So they're just missing guys they used to have. They didn't do a good job addressing the offensive line in the offseason, and their quarterback has kind of changed. You know, 15 years in the NFL, and this offensive line seems to have changed his football DNA.
Oh, wow. Looking at this rookie class, what impact has receiver Alec Pierce made on this team? Seems like a big play machine down the field.
Yeah, so luckily they've been able to get some of the same. They've been able to do some of what Pierce did at Cincinnati in college. They've been able to do that with him in the NFL. Now they don't get the ball down the field enough, but when they do, it's a lot of the time it's Pierce that they're trying to get it to. He's one of those guys where, you know, with a rookie, if your whole thing is big plays and, you know, contested catches and everything, you have to have confidence. Because if you don't, like, a lot of those things are just second nature, and you can't think about doing it. You just do it. And he's gotten the confidence. Reggie Wayne has worked with him a lot. This summer, they tried to speed up Pierce's development as much as possible by putting Stephon Gilmore on him, like, a lot of the time. And so having one of the best lockdown corners from the last 10 years in the NFL, that kind of sped up Pierce's development a little bit. And so, yeah, they do use him a lot with those outside downfield shots, get him 50-50 balls and things like that. I don't think they use him enough in the red zone. They've got a bunch of big, huge pass catchers at tight end and receiver, and they don't quite do that enough. But, you know, they use his speed a lot, you know, kind of downfield digs of about 15-20 yards and things like that. So he's been as good as expected. It's not really a fault of his own that his numbers could probably be better. They probably don't go to him enough. But again, that's, you know, they've given up those 40 sacks, and a lot of his routes are longer developing plays, you know. So if the offensive line played better, they could probably get him the ball more, but he's been a nice addition so far.
So switching over to the defensive side of football, Jake, where Zaire Franklin comes out of nowhere. Obviously, you have the injuries there with you know, at the linebacker position, but this guy's really playing some good football. And I would imagine if there's a defensive MVP right now at this point of the season, maybe he's a guy for them, for the Colts specifically. So, and then Bobby Okereke, you know, playing alongside him. But what has allowed Zaire Franklin to emerge on the scene here?
Yeah, so the good part about that, I mean, it's been a kind of a perfect storm, but Shaquille Leonard being out, you know, basically since June, allowed Zaire Franklin to get all of the snaps at Mike linebacker throughout the offseason program and training camp. So Franklin didn't really have to, like, play catch up and get up to speed, because he's been taking all of those reps, like, all year. So that's been really good. He's always been a good athlete. He's been a good run defender, especially this year. He's one of those guys that keeps his eyes on the backfield and kind of finds the crease through the chaos, and we'll just kind of sniff things out. So that's been really good. He's a smart guy, so he definitely had, him and Okereke both kind of had some issues earlier in the season adjusting to Gus Bradley's scheme, because it kind of requires more from the linebackers than Matt Eberflus's scheme did previously. They kind of just played free and with their instincts and athleticism a lot of the time back then. So they've had to do a lot more with figuring out, like, the depths of their drops and coverage and things like that. But yeah, both Franklin and Okereke have been really, really good this year. And it was kind of a good problem to have, I guess, because when Shaquille Leonard did come back briefly, you didn't really want to take Franklin or Okereke off the field, because, you know, Leonard didn't really know the system yet, and he wasn't physically 100%. And it's just like, well, these guys are playing really good football now. You know, there's not, you know, it's a little disruptive to get Leonard in there, and that situation kind of resolved itself, unfortunately, with him having to have season-ending back surgery yet again.
When you look at the injury report for the Colts this week and the update yesterday with Kwity Paye, I think, being ruled out there, and you got, I think, DeForest Buckner working through something, and even Yannick Ngakoue working through something there. I think those latter two are questionable. Even Grover Stewart, I think, showed up on the injury report this week as well, too. I would imagine Buckner and Ngakoue going to give it a go. Not having Kwity Paye will probably be a big development. This defensive line, at least on tape, hasn't looked bad overall for the most part here, but and especially against the run. That said, I kind of view this because of the shape. I think this defensive line needs to be tested Monday night. I think the Steelers need to try to run on this group and run up on them up the middle at that. What's your kind of sense on, what's your take on kind of the status of this defensive line group with kind of these injuries heading into this game?
Yeah, the Steelers should absolutely attack them on the ground. 3 of the Colts starting 4 defensive linemen are on the injury report right now. Buckner he's questionable with the ribs and the illness. They've got some sort of bug running its way through the whole team right now. So everyone's kind of up in the air with that. But Buckner has had a ton of injuries this year. He's played through it all. But he's had like at least 5 or 6 different things come up. Stewart have been arguably the best defensive tackle tandem in the entire league this year. They've been awesome. So if either of them aren't able to give it a full go, that'd be a huge issue for the Colts. Kwity Paye has been the Colts' best defensive end all season, but he's missed a handful of games with that ankle injury. And Ngakoue does kind of quietly have like 6.5 sacks. He hasn't been like consistently disruptive necessarily, but he gets in there for his assist or his takedown, once every couple weeks. So he provides occasional pressure for them. But yeah, the defensive line is another area the Colts didn't address very well, at least for immediate help this offseason. So you've got guys like Byron Cowart and Eric Johnson, who are going to be the backup defensive tackles. Dayo Adangbo will probably be out there a lot. So they can really take advantage of the Colts' banged up defensive line unless these guys just get some sort of fire lit under them and decide to be ironclad. But yeah, the Colts' defensive line depth is not great, especially Tyquan Lewis is out for the year with a knee injury. So the defensive line is definitely more vulnerable right now than it has been at any point this season.
Kylan Granson on the offensive side of football, a lot of people don't recognize the name, but when you look at what they're trying to do offensively, at least in the last couple of reels of all 22 tape, that looks like they try to go heavy a lot with Mo Alley Cox and Granson, and Granson had a couple of nice blocks, I thought, in that game against the Eagles, and I think they downgraded Granson to doubtful yesterday there. How big a loss? I'm going to assume he's not going to play. So how big a loss is that on the offensive side of football, not having Granson? I imagine we've seen him use an extra lineman in there, I think, on the offensive line. But how big a loss would Granson be in this game?
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer not to have him because he is their top pass catching tight end this year. Mo Alley Cox just has been a lot more of a blocker and just hasn't been very involved in the passing game. Luckily, the Colts are getting Jelani Woods back, their rookie tight end, who's just a physical freak. So at least if Granson's going to be out, they are getting Woods back. I actually talked with Josh Carney this week on my show, and he said, over the middle of the field, the tight ends could really do something against the Steelers. So it does suck to not have their best yards after catch tight end out there this week. Because like you said, it's, he's doubtful. He probably won't play. So yeah, it'll definitely be a hit for them. It gives them one less weapon. I think it'll probably put more of an emphasis on Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell now over the middle of the field. Cause those are their other guys that tend to run those, those slants and the balls that Matt Ryan gets them with room to run in front of them. Granson gets a lot of those otherwise. So I would expect some more of those targets to go to Pittman and Campbell.
Jake, my last question for you, then I'll let Dave finish things out. What has the presence and addition of Stephon Gilmore done, and has that opened up the secondary or the versatility of the coverages and the way the Colts play defense?
Yeah, a little bit. Because you don't have to worry about that side of the field when he's out there. He hasn't looked like an older guy this year, luckily for the Colts. He's looked closer to the Pro Bowl version of himself. In 3 of their wins, he has closed it out either with an interception or a pass breakup on the opposing offense's final drive. So he's been awesome for them this year. The safety play is kind of waxed and waned a little bit. Early on, Rodney Thomas was getting a lot of playing time, and he was a 7th-round rookie, and he was playing great, in part because he didn't have to worry about Stephon Gilmore's side of the field. So yeah, he's been really good for them this year. He's still tough. He tackles really well. And I think he's been a good influence on Isaiah Rodgers as well, because Rodgers really hasn't been tested either. It's been tough to pass on these corners when they have, when opposing quarterbacks do know they can't go at Gilmore and they do try Rodgers, it doesn't typically work out well for him. So, having Gilmore out there was probably the best, actually not even probably, it was the best move they made this year on defense for sure.
When you look at, I think through the scouting process, Dallas Flowers was a guy that a couple of our guys highlighted throughout the process here. Obviously a backup here. Give us a little status report on how he's coming along.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, he hasn't really played much outside of special teams. He was a healthy scratch a lot of the time. He was one of those guys, they saw a bright future with him, but they didn't want to lose him, so they just didn't cut him and try and sneak him on the practice squad. They have had to use him in a pinch, and he actually was their kick returner last week. But no, they see a good future with him. They really like his ability to shut things down. That's what they envision with him, is him being kind of a lockdown guy, but he's going to need some development. He was even kind of leapfrogged on the depth chart. They had some cornerback injuries earlier in the year, and rather than play him, they brought a veteran up from the practice squad. So they're not quite ready to play him defensively yet. They like him on special teams for now, but long term, they hope to get him on the field defensively as an outside cornerback.
All right, Jake, it kind of feels like, the Steelers struggle in yards after catch and creating explosive plays. Yeah, getting the running game's been, slight uptick in overall performance in there. But it feels like, and look, the Colts look like they're a team that likes to kind of throw short and run long a little bit, explosive plays that way as well, too, at times here. What's your thoughts going on into this game Monday night? And how about a quick score prediction for us here?
Yeah, so the Colts tend to not do the things that I hope to see from them. Their offensive play calling can be a little unpredictable and bland at times. But what really works for them is using, like I said, Campbell and Michael Pittman over the middle. Campbell has kind of had his coming out party lately these last several weeks. Lots of touches, lots of yards after the catch opportunities. They just do a lot of simple stuff that seems to work for them. They love the legal pick plays and things like that. So I hope and expect to see a lot of Pittman and Campbell over the middle. I know the cornerbacks for the Steelers have struggled quite a bit. So as long as the defense isn't just breathing down Matt Ryan's neck constantly, I'd love to see a shot or two to Alec Pierce downfield because it works. Overall, I tend to not do well when picking the Colts. They let me down every now and then when I do it. But I'm kind of thinking 20-16. I think the Colts defense will do well against Kenny Pickett and that group there. But, perhaps a big play to Pickens or Deontay Johnson or Pat Freiermuth gives them a touchdown, But I'm going to say 20-16 Colts, but will not be surprised if we see a letdown.
All right, fair enough. So with that, Jake, you can make sure you follow Jake on Twitter at Jake Arthur NFL and get over to the SI.com group over there. Find the Colts page. You can read all of his preview stuff over there too, and make sure to listen to him on the Locked On Colts podcast, where I'm sure he's got a couple episodes further previewing this game ahead of the Monday night matchup here in Indianapolis. So with that, Jake, appreciate you being on the show. And as always, thanks for being on with Dave and Alex on the Terrible Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our thanks to Jake Arthur. Be sure to follow him on Twitter and shout him out at Jake Arthur NFL. Appreciate his time coming on to talk Colts here on this Monday. As always, from our beat guys and anyone we bring on to talk about the opponent, great information there.
Absolutely. It is good to bounce again, especially get his thoughts off of the whole Frank Reich to Saturday transition. It sounds like at first he was really kind of super critical, of that, especially the actual hiring aspect, or who, bringing Saturday in, probably not so much of Frank Reich, being relieved of his duties, if you will. But it was a little bit interesting to see, Jim Irsay's just not kind of known for that stuff there. And for all the criticism of the hiring of Saturday right out of shoot, obviously Bill Cowher was really, real critical of the move to Saturday. And what did they do? They come out and they beat the Raiders, and they really gave the Eagles all they wanted in that game last week on top of it there. So it is interesting to hear his views on it, where this team is right now, and how they're moving forward with the rest of their season.
What is even the Steelers' equivalent of hiring Jeff Saturday? I'm trying to think about what would be that move in a hypothetical world where Mike Tomlin got fired, and I guess like Hines Ward would be like, is that the equivalent to what the Colts did?
I don't know. Alan Faneca would be kind of in the same situation, right?
Yeah. Is he coaching some?
Wasn't he doing some high school coaching and all?
That sounds right. Yeah. I mean, Ward, I guess, had a bit more of a resume since he's done some stuff in the league. And of course, now he's with the XFL, right? He's with the XFL, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, but it's worked. I mean, the results are the only thing that matters. And Saturday's helped turn this team around and provided the spark. And as you said, they beat the Raiders, and they almost beat the Eagles. And as Jake said, probably should have beat the Eagles. And so, despite the weirdness and wonkiness of that decision, it's for now, at least it's been working.
Look, and I'm sure they're going into this game thinking, we have, this is on the national stage. You want to prove yourself, against, a Steelers team that, for the most part over the years, is obviously shows up in those big games in prime time. So this is a chance for the Colts to kind of make a statement, if you will, on a national stage, even though it is against a 3-7, Steelers team who, looks to be going in the opposite direction. Overall, and you got a super veteran quarterback in Matt Ryan versus a rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah, I was going to say this has to be the oldest gap in terms of starting quarterbacks, but you played Tom Brady earlier this year, so I assume that takes the top spot there. But yeah, let's preview this Colts game. We'll start with the Colts offense, and I think one reason why you've seen the Colts have that stability is one of the moves that reportedly Saturday pushed for whenever he became the interim head coach. One of the conditions of him becoming coach was Matt Ryan has to become the starter again. And Sam Ellinger, to me, was a knee-jerk reaction to turn to him, a desperate move that reportedly came from Jim Irsay. It was not a Frank Reich decision. And so bringing Ryan back, I think, just brings more stability, takes a bit fewer sacks, just smarter with the football, all the things you get from a veteran overall. But we know when it comes to the Colts and how you defend them and the way the Steelers and Mike Tomlin and players have spoken about it all week, it starts with that Colts run game. It starts with number 28, Jonathan Taylor. You better contain him. You better find ways to minimize his impact. You really can't stop him, but can you minimize him? if you can't do that, then really nothing else matters.
Yeah, and with Jeff Saturday being this is something that Mike Tomlin said right out of the shoot and previewing this game. With Saturday being a former offensive lineman, you can bet for sure he's going to want to try to run the football. And why wouldn't you with some Quentin Nelson at left guard there, and Kelly, their center's not bad up the middle there, and you got a guy in Jonathan Taylor who's a guy that I think not only in his run demeanor, because he runs hard, he really does, and he hits it real fast, but I think he's got very good vision. I think he sees things develop in front of him super quickly and knows where to hit. And let me tell you, if you get into a close game with this guy, which this game very well could be on Monday night, with the Steelers here, you're going to get tired of tackling that guy in the secondary for sure. So you got to try to set the tone early and shut this thing down with him and get them. Even though the Steelers did a good job, overall, I thought against the run, against the Bengals, one thing that we highlighted coming out of that game is they didn't get them in enough third down situations there where they could let their pass rush pin their ears back and get after the quarterback there. This is a situation where, as you state, you're not going to shut Jonathan Taylor down, I don't think, overall, but you better put the Colts in enough third down situations of, let's say, 3rd and 5 or longer there where at least you get a chance to get off the field. The Steelers defense didn't have a chance to get off the field enough times, I don't think, against the Bengals here. So they know what the Colts are going to try to do here. It's going to be run. It's going to be some of that inside zone stuff. They're not afraid to pull the guards. They'll go heavy, some heavy pack. They'll line up and they'll tell you they're going to run. I mean,
sure.
Matt Ryan up under center type of things. And, here it is, stop it. And that's what the onus will be on the Steelers defense. Now, I imagine they'll play action off of that a little bit. They like to, it feels like they want to, with Matt Ryan's mobility is just not there anymore. And hasn't
he had that 40-yard run a couple weeks ago, but I get your point.
Yeah. I wouldn't look for that to happen too many times in this game, but I would think the onus when they do pass, if it's in manageable situations, would be to get the ball out from Matt Ryan quick here, because this is an offense that is allowed that went into this week with the Bears tied for the most sacks allowed at 40. I think Matt Ryan has been on the receiving end of like 28 of those overall. I think the right tackle's good. That ought to be an interesting matchup between him and TJ Watt. I would imagine the help, as you would expect, would be to TJ Watt's side overall there. But you gotta stop Jonathan Taylor in this between the tackles, even though he is good on the edge as well too. And going back, I remember doing a big breakdown of Jonathan Taylor coming out of college there, and it really hasn't been as big of a thing as I thought it might be coming out. This is a guy that's had ball security concerns in the past in college. And I don't think, how many fumbles does he have on the season? Or
3. He had 4 last year and 3 this year, which is tied for the second most of anyone in American football.
So he can get that ball ripped out of him. All right.
I think it's a bit of a volume thing too, just given how much he touches the football. But I think you're right. It was a concern in college, and it is still a concern now. So
I would be ball hunting as much as you can in this game because he obviously is going to get quite a few touches in this as well too. They can throw to him out of the backfield, but he looks healthy now, and I think that's one thing that really sticks out in these last 2 games against the Raiders and the Eagles is he looks healthy. He's hitting it. He's getting into that second level there. And if you let him run downhill early in the game, and as I always like to say, if you run successful early, you're probably going to have an opportunity to run successful late. I don't think you want to get into the fourth quarter and have to constantly be dragging this guy down to the ground after 5 yards.
To your point, I think about TJ Watt, and everybody talked about the first snap he came back against the Saints and knifes in and gets a run stop. But the very next play, he's kind of pursuing a bit on the backside, had contained on it, and does that TJ Watt punch out. And he's so good at trying to punch that football out. Hasn't gotten one this year, and obviously a large part due to the injury, but he's a guy that's always searching for the football, always trying to go with that big right hook over the top and trying to punch that football out. So I wonder if that's going to be something that he can successfully do tonight versus Jonathan Taylor. But this Colts run game, it's not too fancy. It's nothing crazy. To me, it's downhill, it's duo, it's man blocking, run behind big Quentin Nelson and get downhill. And so I think the goal overall, I wrote about this in my article for Steelers Depot today, was don't let Taylor get vertical. Try to build that fence, keep him wide, keep him horizontal. If he gets a crease, he's going to hit it. Linebackers have to get off blocks. D-line has to hold the point of attack. Corners have to tackle. Colts do a lot of times where they're cracking safeties and forcing crack replace rules and things like that. And so it'll truly be an 11-man job to stop Taylor, but don't let him get vertical. Don't let him to get downhill. If he does, that's when you got 225 pounds coming full steam at you and this guy can run. That's when you're going to have a lot of problems as a run defense overall.
I probably have spent too much time on this, but people saying who the hell is Kylan Granson, but I think they're going to miss him in this game, Alex, because, I mean, look, Jelani Woods, I realize you're getting Jelani Woods up, but is Jelani Woods really known for his blocking? I mean, you don't want any tight end out there one-on-one with TJ Watt. But I think if they were going to have anybody do that, Kylan Granson would be a guy they want to do that with. I would imagine, and we see this in their tape anyway, that they'll put an extra offensive lineman out there at times. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see that maybe a few more times in this game on situations where they're saying we're going to run the football in here. So it's going to be interesting to look back, I think, on this game and see just how much they miss I don't want to say a top tier blocking tight end, but maybe their best blocking tight end on the roster in Kylan Granson.
Yeah, he wears a lot of hats. He's kind of that H-back type. When he came out of SMU, he does stuff in pass game, different alignments and things like that. So there's a versatility aspect. We assume he's not going to play. He got downgraded to doubtful with that illness, like we mentioned a bit earlier in the show. Although I know as much love and attention rightfully as this Colts rushing attack gets, the subject of my terrible take today, Dave, is that Colts pass game. I think they got some big bodies at receiver. In Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, even to a lesser extent of Paris Campbell. Can Pittsburgh match up against those guys 1v1? Can they make plays? Pittsburgh, at their worst moments, have struggled against those bigger corners this year. They've handled some speedier guys, some smaller guys like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They've really struggled versus A.J. Brown, versus T. Higgins. And so Pittman in the slot's going to be a big concern. Pierce downfield, what Campbell can do as well. Those are my concerns that we don't talk about too much because Taylor gets all the attention. But with Ryan back at quarterback, with these big bodies at receiver, can these corners contest to make plays? That's an underrated concern in this game.
Yeah, look, and I was higher on. I think I had Pittman rated higher than Chase Claypool in that class. I thought Pittman was a guy that maybe the Steelers would look hard and heavy at there, and he's starting to slowly come into his own. And Jake brought up something that it shows up on tape. If you play a lot of man against them, they will run a lot of those concepts where they try to effectively just rub you off and get the ball out quick to a guy like Pittman out in space. And a couple of his big catches and runs have been catch short, run long type situation. With him, they can move him all around there, and that's another thing that goes back to Kylan Granson, because I think in a few of those concepts, Granson's the one that's had some nice timing in his routes to help serve in the rub off to get Pittman free.
Yeah, and the Steelers are one of the most man-heavy defenses in football, and so you could probably expect that. And so I'm sure the Colts are watching that Bengals tape and seeing how the Bengals moved around T. Higgins and used bunt sets and changed alignments and things like that. And, Pittsburgh wants to treat Arthur Millette as a three-down corner, then teams are going to continue to attack that. So we'll see what the Pittsburgh Steelers' plan of attack is. If they change things up, if Sutton bumps inside, if Nord comes down in the slot, we'll have to see. But I know that the run game is where it starts, but I don't want to say that's the period at the end of the statement, because that pass game with their big body guys, I think they can pose a threat against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, especially if they stay ahead of the chains, right? They have right. in guessing type situation. I tell you, another thing is those wide receivers are physical out on the edge too. So they
block.
They will, if they get the numbers, you can expect a quick, tunnel screen or smoke screen, wide receiver screen out to the edge, or even, maybe motion a back out there to do it that way as well too. If they get the number, they like to take their chances on the outside, because of the physicality of their wide receivers and blocking. I think Pittman does a great job in it. I think Campbell is shown as well too. So that's another element of the game that's kind of, an extension of the running game, if you will, right? Of quick throwing to those wide receivers on the outside and let them make plays. We saw the Steelers have one drawn up there, first play of the second half against the Bengals, and they couldn't execute it because the blocking of theirs failed. I think their wide receivers do a very good job of blocking out on the edge.
I think so too. It's an underrated group overall, and you get a tackle Taylor. You better tackle those receivers. Now, if there is one weakness to this team, it's that offensive line. And as Jake pointed out, it's not all on the O line, and it sounds like it's in a better spot now than it was, say, mid-season a couple weeks ago. But yeah, they've still given up 40 sacks this year. That was tied with the Bears for the most entering Week 12. And so I think Pittsburgh's pass rush with a healthy T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith. We'll see how Hayward does against Quentin Nelson. He schooled him back in his rookie year.
He's had good games, a good game against him, right?
Yeah, that was his rookie year. So we'll see what Nelson looks like now. I'm sure he's a bit more prepared for round two. But, it's still Hayward can collapse the pocket and Ogunjobi being back and things like that. So I'd be highly disappointed. I know you wrote about it. I wrote about it too this morning. Be very disappointed if Pittsburgh's pass rush can't get 3 to 5 sacks in this game.
Absolutely. And I put even we have seen in the past them have games, especially in prime time, where it comes in bunches, man. And and Matt Ryan's not going to run away from anybody. He will turtle in a heartbeat if you collapse that pocket around him. I think that Braden Smith, though, has had, at least in what I watch, I think he's kind of represented himself pretty good. But TJ Watt's a game wrecker on top of it. I because they're back healthy now. This is the third game back for TJ Watt. We've seen. I'm sure Alex Highsmith will have a spin or two set up for Ronman on the opposite side over there. Should be interesting to see Hayward singled up on Nelson. And I don't know, maybe the key matchup to watch here is Ogunjobi on a guy like Will Fries, because there ought to be some opportunities here for Ogunjobi to really wreck the inside here on a guy like Will Fries. So I think a key to this game is, people say, yeah, sacks are huge in every game, but I call it, instead of sack lunches, sack bunches. And I think that for the Steelers to win this game, Matt Ryan's got to go down to the ground numerous times. And I think anything fewer than 5, they haven't done their job, to be honest with you.
Sure. But to bring it full circle, if you can't stop that Colts run game, you're not going to sack Matt Ryan 5 times. They're going to stay ahead of schedule. They're going to run the ball 30 times, and you're not going to even touch the guy. So it all kind of comes together, obviously.
Right. I mean, you can't let this thing get to the fourth quarter and the Colts have only had 10 third down opportunities, right?
Right. Or 10 and they're 3rd and 2. You got to be in those 3rd and 6 pluses.
Right. Keep them behind the chains as best as you can, because you're not going to completely, shut them down. But, if you do get the opportunity to get to the quarterback too, you got to get that ball. I think you might be able to get that ball away from Matt Ryan a time or two. And as we already previously mentioned too, I would be doing my best to rip that ball out of Jonathan Taylor's hands.
Last on that Colts offense, watch out for, call it Canada's revenge. The Colts run that sprint out play Pittsburgh ran a ton early in the season, but the Colts do it a lot smarter because they run it on, say, 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3, where that's a play that's only going to get you, say, 4 yards, but it moves the sticks on 3rd and short, not on 2nd and 11. You're getting 4, now you're in 3rd and 7. So don't be surprised, even though the lack of mobility Ryan has overall. I've seen that sprint out to the field side quite a bit on their tape.
Yeah, you did a good job of mapping that stuff out in the pregame scouting report as well too, and they'll run a lot of those short outs to Michael Pittman and all. Take what they give you. They're at this, and at least in the last two games, they are very much take what you give us in the passing game.
Dave, to flip over to the Colts defense, on paper, when they're healthy 100%, I think it's a pretty decent unit overall. But the big question, the big concern is health, especially with that defensive line, with Pay being out and Buckner and Ngakoue, those guys being banged up in this one, even Grover Stewart to an extent. So, coming into this game, Colts had the second best run defense on paper, but how strong is it now? That's what we're going to see if Pittsburgh is able to test and have success against early in this game.
Yeah, I want to see just how healthy they are up front there. I want to see if Franklin and Okereke, make them guys make a lot of tackles close to the line of scrimmage as well too. So overall, as a whole, this year they have been stout, against running games. They have done their job, but you can't help but think, because the way they're kind of beat up right now, that's not an area that you don't, especially the way. Look, the Steelers running game hasn't been awesome the last few weeks, but there have been improvements made in it. And, Najee looks like he's running the ball a lot better now. And you block it up and see what you can get early. I try to, just like the Colts are going to try to establish the run early and often in this one, I think the Steelers should do the same and try to run right up the gut at them.
Sure, I'm with you there. And their linebacker play, you got a question mark on Zaire Franklin, their top tackler, who I'm in charge of watching the schematics, not the individual, and commenting on that, but just watching the tape. And I'm sure you saw it as well. That number 44, that's Franklin. Dude is everywhere. I mean, just around the ball, never comes off the field. So he's questionable with an illness in this game. If he can't play, that's going to be a loss. That Colt system, as Jake outlined, as I wrote about in my scouting report, they ask a lot from their linebackers, especially in coverage. So Franklin's not able to go. They were already without Shaq Leonard. That's a real big domino effect, kind of working on a fourth string kind of guy.
Yeah, I had to kind of do some research on Zaire Franklin, man. And it starts at the beginning of the week when I do, the lines and kind of soft preview of the game. You look at the amount of tackles that guy has, it's like, holy cow, where'd this guy come from?
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's 110 entering this game. That was leading the whole NFL, and this dude had missed like 4 or 5 snaps the entire season. So just playing without him in general is probably going to be weird for them if he can't play, but we'll have to see when the inactives come out tonight. In coverage, they run split field coverages. They mix things up well. They got Gilmore, who can kind of, lock up on one side, and they can run different combination coverages to the other. So I think, you have to watch that. You have to watch out for Kenny Moore, the slot corner, who's their Mike Hilton, and probably maybe the best slot corner, a top slot corner with Hilton and Moore and Teron Johnson in Buffalo. Those are guys that attack the run well, allows them to be in sub-package football, but still get a really strong run game, and probably one of the many reasons why the Colts run defense has been among the best in football.
Did you find them the last few weeks playing a lot of man on early downs?
Yeah, I mean, they mix it up pretty well. It's some of the cover two, it's some man, it's some split field stuff. They do a lot of matching coverages. It's a lot of carrying and passing stuff off. So they do a good job of distributing routes well.
You gotta start moving. Regardless, you gotta find a way to start getting the ball to Deontay Johnson in open space. And that's been a kind of a hot button of ours these last couple of weeks here. You got to do more with Deontay Johnson than the curls, than the comebacks, than the outs, in my opinion. I think you got to get him running in open space against some of these guys. Maybe move them into the slot a little bit more than they have already there. But they're pretty good at not giving up explosive plays. In fact, a lot of what the explosive plays that they're giving up kind of catch short, run long type situations.
I didn't dig into that specifically, but I was just going to say, yeah, they keep a lid on things overall. They don't allow the big play over the top of the pass game too much. And if you look at some of their numbers, their yards per attempt is one of the better in football, but they allow a high completion rate. So that generally tells me they're allowing the shorter stuff underneath, which should play better into a Deontay Johnson's wheelhouse, maybe more so than a George Pickens wheelhouse. But, can you get Johnson yak opportunities? That's going to be key. So I think on paper, it should be a big game for Johnson, just given A, all the talk about moving him around and getting him more involved, and then B, just the way the Colts' personality is defensively, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I'd also like to see the Steelers screen games really hadn't been anything for several seasons now. But man, can you get the ball to Najee a couple of times dumped off with the blocker or two out in front, and maybe get some hidden yardage that way?
That'd be nice. I think on tape, the Colts have allowed stuff in the screen game, but I just don't see that being one of Pittsburgh's strengths. So, I mean, you'd be asking probably too much for that.
Yeah, if anything, use them in the check down or whatnot, a couple of times.
Right, and Harris should play a lot in this game with Warren being out. I mean, they're going to bring in Snell for a couple of snaps, probably more passing down stuff, a couple 1st and 10 carries, and if McFarland gets elevated, assuming that happens, then maybe he gets a couple as well. But what did Harris play in that Bengals game in terms of a snap count? I think it was a season high for him. Now, obviously, you didn't have the other guys to turn to, the elevations and things like that, but Harris played 92% of the snaps in that game. So it could be a Harris workhorse type of game.
It really feels like he needs to have, I don't know, at a minimum of 130 total yards from scrimmage in this game.
Yeah, and as you said, maybe more of a pass game impact. Hasn't really impacted the passing game much this year the way he did last year, in part because he's no longer the third down back with Warren taking over those duties, but Warren's no longer in that role for this game, obviously not playing, and so Harris should be the third down back and maybe has some more pass game responsibility.
And they're not a defense that likes to send numbers a lot, though, right?
No, they've never been. I mean, the 4-3 teams in general aren't. Their blitz rate's 15%. That's 30th in the NFL. They're not getting a ton of sacks in terms of the overall number, but it comes from a lot of people. I think they have 11 guys that have at least one sack this year. It's Buckner. I can't believe Ngakoue's only 27. I remember Todd Haley talking about Ngakoue. That feels like a decade ago. Still a young guy because he came out of the NFL so young. Grover Stewart's a really underrated defensive tackle, maybe the most underrated interior lineman in football right now. He's got 8 tackles for loss. And so they get their pressure from a lot of people, but they don't have necessarily great overall sack numbers. It's about average.
Right. And, Najee's done as of late, better job picking things up with the when blitzes have come and, along those lines in there. And, big stat, that's not really talked about. Kenny Pickett's done pretty good against the blitz as of late, right? Last couple of games.
Yeah, do you have numbers on that? I think I've seen some of the numbers. I think his completion rate's one of the highest versus the blitz. Right. Is that the stat on him? So
I'll have to pull that up. But
again, the Colts not going to send a lot of people. They're sending. Right. They run a lot of games. I mean, 3rd and long, they're going to overload the front and they're going to stunt. And Pittsburgh's been miserable against stunts, and so I'm worried about that in terms of communicating on the road, a louder environment, across the board, even more probably primarily right side, right guard, right tackle, but. Since that Dolphins game, teams have been just killing Pittsburgh with stunts and twists in games, and they got to clean that up to give Kenny Pickett a chance.
70.6% completion rate percentage against the blitz this season, has a 108.4 passer rating against the blitz so far there. I tell you another thing that stuck out. Look, nobody's going to confuse Kenny Pickett with Jalen Hurts, but I don't think they have done all that well of a job these last couple of games of actually contain on the quarterback. So I think there will be opportunities maybe for Kenny Pickett to take this, to pull it down and run with the football. Maybe add in another 25, 30 yards rushing in this game via just pulling the football down.
Yeah, possibly. If their linebackers are out there. Because, again, their linebackers carry a lot, too. So sometimes they're not always kind of watching the quarterback. They're not in those shallow kind of hook zones. So there may be chances. Absolutely.
And, don't, keep up this, don't turn the football over. Don't give them. They only have, I think, 4 or 5 interceptions on the season. I don't think they have a player with more than 1.
Yeah, 4 picks, all by 4 separate players. They have only 11 takeaways this year. I believe they are 31st in turnover differential, -8, I want to say the number is. And so they have not done well there. But again, Matt Ryan being back at quarterback, and I think it's probably going to bring a bit more stability for them overall. And I imagine, hadn't checked the numbers, I imagine they not turned the ball over too much in these last 2 games.
Okay.
Any other final thoughts with the Colts? I think we kind of covered things pretty well.
All right.
All right, Dave, we made our Week 12 picks, obviously, in the Friday show, so let's make the one game outstanding to finish out Week 12 with the Steelers-Colts game. Dave, who do you have? I'm going to make you pick this one first. Who do you got in this game?
Look, I I view this as a game that I think they should win, Alex. I really, really do. I think that the Steelers should win this game.
Is there a butt coming, or is it?
No, I think they will win this game as well too. I expect it to be a tight game. I think a turnover or two might be the difference. I have faith that the Steelers defense will do enough in sack. I believe they will hit the 5 sack or more mark on Matt Ryan in this game. I like their chances of maybe ripping one out from Jonathan Taylor in this game. I think if they win the turnover battle in this one, I think that'll go a long way in winning. I don't expect either side to have a huge amount of explosive play, so I think it'll be pretty close, 5-3 one side, maybe in this one overall. But I think this is a game that they should win. I think this is a game they will win, and I have the Steelers winning this 26-20.
Okay, wow, 26 points. So an offensive explosion recently here for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Maybe there'll be a defensive one in there.
All right, we'll take it anyway.
How about a scoop and score by Minka?
Ooh, who punches it out? Who does the punch?
Miles Jack.
Ooh, I like it. You were talking about the off-ball linebackers needing splash, and so can Jack provide that? All right, I'm with you. I'm with you in terms of the winner of this game. I got Pittsburgh winning this one. I'm going to try to stick my neck out a little bit. This offense has made strides. There has been improvement. The Colts defensive line's hurt, and their front seven in general is kind of banged up right now. I think Pittsburgh's defense is not going to be as bad as it was, obviously, against the Bengals. And so I'm going to say, again, by Pittsburgh's margins, a relatively comfortable win. 24-14 is the way I'm going to go in this one. So I don't know if that means a late field goal that kind of salts it away. Maybe a strong fourth quarter performance in Pittsburgh, but I think Pittsburgh's pass rush, as you said, I don't know if I see 5 sacks, but I see maybe at least 3 and a fair amount of pressure. Pittsburgh's run defense has played well this year. Obviously, Taylor's always going to be an every down challenge. It takes one play for him to go 60 yards and kind of wreck your numbers and ruin your day. But I think Pittsburgh is up to the task, and they come away with a win.
You look at this team from a continuity standpoint alone, and knock on wood, because you see what some of these teams, like the Packers, the different line combinations they've had to go through. And look, we remember back a couple seasons not too terribly long ago where the Steelers looked like they were starting a new offensive line, a new set of 5 every week there at times. But the Steelers have had continuity up front with these guys at this point. They've had really continuity at the skill positions as well. You look at the defensive side of football now, obviously they didn't have a lot of continuity without Watt for numerous weeks, and obviously didn't have Casey, but now they've had these guys back now for several weeks. I think the continuity factor alone with what they've had these last several weeks, in particular on the defensive side of football. Although I will continue to say that I was very disappointed with the amount of explosive plays that they gave up to the Bengals. But this Colts offense, I don't think even Jonathan Taylor being a key of it, I don't think as far as passing goes, they're on the same level as a team like the Bengals. But I think just the continuity factor alone makes the Steelers a better team here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, I know that some of the quarterback changes probably skew the numbers, but for as bad as Pittsburgh's offense has been, statistically, the Colts have a worse points per game offense. They're 31st in football, only ahead of the lowly Broncos. And so the Colts have obviously very much struggled to put up points as well. Again, I think they're probably in a bit better position now with Taylor back and healthy, and Ryan, a quarterback with Pittsburgh's offense, has gained some traction. It has been far from perfect, and that second half against the Bengals was extremely frustrating, but 200-plus yards against the Saints, 217 to be specific, and 30 points overall against the Bengals, 20 by halftime. That is progress. It is painful. It is slow. It is still frustrating, but it is progress. I think that continues tonight.
I don't want to call it a new low if they lose to the Colts, but
I will.
But Tomlin versus Saturday, we just talked about the continuity, and these regardless, Steelers in prime time. You think they're going to be. They usually show up for games like this, and it will be very, very. I understand the Colts are favored. That's a whole better confidence thing more than anything here. But I personally, I think the Steelers should be favored in this game, or at least this should be a pick'em type game. And I'll be disappointed if they lose this game.
Two final thoughts. A, could there be a trick play coming from either side? Extra day to prepare? Do you have someone come up with something? I could see the Colts probably do it more than I could see Pittsburgh doing it with Saturday.
I'm with you there. I think they shot, I think they shot their shot, the Steelers maybe last week there. I don't think there should be a lot of reason to do that, in this one, but stranger things have happened. And where's the special Mike? You know what we haven't hit on is special teams here. Mike Tomlin pretty animate the other day in his show that this is the time of year where you could see the big return. Kickers not booting the ball as deep, and it sounds like Mike Tomlin's expecting some special team splash.
And they've gotten some of that. Now you're in a dome tonight, and so there's no weather. The roof's closed. Jim Irsay loves tweeting out the status of the roof. I don't know why he does that, but he does. So the roof's closed. But you're right. The Steven Sims has provided some splash there, and we'll see if either team can do something. But yeah, I'm thinking trick play in terms of that fake punt, that fake field goal, somebody doing something wild like that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but extra day, Jeff Saturday, I'm sure just kind of that YOLO attitude. Hey, we're playing with house money. Let's see what happens. But the other point I was going to make was it wouldn't be a new low because technically the Steelers are underdogs in this game.
Right.
But if Pittsburgh loses this game, they would, of course, drop to 3-8. That would be the first time ever in franchise history they began a year 3-8. They've been 3-7 several times before, never gone to 3-8. So from that standpoint, historically, I would call that a new low.
All right. Fair enough.
All right, Dave covered this game pretty well. And of course, are we coming back on Tuesday or Wednesday? What are we doing here to recap this thing? Any idea on the plan for the podcast?
Yeah, I suppose we should turn around and recap it then. Probably a Tuesday show and
something probably pretty short, but just to get a quick recap out there. But
sounds fine.
All right, sounds good. But let's get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
Okay, let's get to this one from Daniel Sotrich. Hey, guys, I know the tool sets are different, but I can't help but wonder if Pickett could have a Jalen Hurts-like career trajectory. Hear me out, he says. In Hurts' first 20 games as a starter, I didn't think he looked like an NFL quarterback. Now, after the Eagles built around him, he looks like a legit MVP candidate. Obviously, Andy Weidl was a common denominator here. If the Steelers built a great offensive line for Pickett and get him in an NFL offensive coordinator, is it unthinkable that Pickett could be where Hurts is now in a couple of years? I mean, as far as a progression, I mean, you would expect you would hope Kenny Pickett's going to make strides just the more games that he plays. Playing in Hurts' favor in what's happened with him, I think, is the offense is built around things that he does extremely well. And a lot of that's with his feet, right? That guy really can make you pay. And look, if they're able to set the tone early and get that running game of theirs going, we talked about this prior to the Eagles game here, their ability to have the run portion of the RPO work early makes that even more deadly with what they could do with Jalen Hurts, not only as a runner, but in the passing game. I just think that they have perfectly put him in a perfect system for him. And then, make no mistake, that offensive line of theirs, I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, that makes it easy on them. They got some good weapons around them. And obviously they had a tight end go down injured there, but it didn't look like they missed that. And their running backs, are good. And I just think the way they have built around him and his game specifically is what has really helped Hurts. What is Kenny Pickett's game? Kenny Pickett's never going to be Jalen Hurts as far as that style of running the football, I don't think. Now, can they build around him with a good offensive line, be able to run the football to take the onus off him as he continues to learn the NFL game? Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get here is I don't look at it so much as a Jalen Hurts versus Kenny Pickett type thing here, other than just, building around him properly. And I guess in so many words, that's what Daniel's saying here.
Right. I mean, of course, the more you add to an offense, the more help you give a quarterback with a really stout and strong offensive line. And you have a coach that plays with the skill set really well, and you combine all those things, you're going to get better results. So
I guess what I'm saying is Jalen Hurts and Kenny Pickett are two different style quarterbacks.
Right. And I think Hurts had a lot more room to grow coming out of college than Pickett does. They both have room to grow. I don't want to say that Pickett is maxed out. Still a quarterback, still, he's probably better than where he was a year ago this time at Pitt, but there's a different level of ceiling to really attain to. I think I'd be more apt to say that, wouldn't compare it to Jalen Hurts, but I would compare it more to Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco with a really strong offensive line, a good run game scheme overall, and the way that Garoppolo runs that show when it all comes together. That's probably more of an apt way I would try to compare Pickett's situation than opposed to Hurts, who has a pretty different skill set in offense they run.
Our buddy Lenny Barsikowski's back. David Alex, I about fell on the floor laughing so hard when Alex said on the Wednesday podcast that he thought Mick Jagger and Steven Tyler were the same person.
Doesn't that feel true? That feels true. It feels like that's accurate.
Alex, I know you weren't trying to be funny, but that's hilarious. He says, I know you guys hate this kind of talk, but I'm going to bring this up anyway. Can you imagine how much better off we would be if we would have signed James Conner and then focused on the offensive line? I'm watching this game today, and he's looking very good. James Conner did have a good game for Arizona. Had 100 yards on the ground. I don't know, handful of catches and a touchdown catch in that game as well too. The overall sentiment here is, should have re-signed Connor and, obviously addressed the offensive line. And, I can see why a lot of people think that right now.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but they wanted a workhorse back, and Connor, with the injuries, unfortunately, he's dealt with some of those in Arizona this year. He's
missed some time too this year.
Yeah, he's never been able to get healthy. Then you could rely him to be the workhorse guy, and so that was the story and the reason there. But I understand the point, and we talk about this team not investing enough in its offensive line. I think that'll change starting this offseason with Weidl being on board and his trench first approach. But have we ever seen Mick Jagger and Steven Tyler in the same room? Because if not, then I still have some questions.
You're not a big Stones fan, right? I mean, you don't listen to a lot, the hits, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're the biggest hits, I guess, but it's not on my Spotify playlist.
Right. Who do you listen to these days? You're all
it's
over
a
the map,
mess. I'm all over the place. It's a lot of nostalgia, to be honest. Like just any Madden soundtrack from 15 years ago, it just basically it's just trying to relive my youth, I guess. So like Madden 07, I think, had the best soundtrack ever. So it's a total mismatch of just every genre. I'm not like a one train guy, but it's all over the place.
I mean, but you like some old Pink Floyd and all right. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I like old rock. I mean, I just generally speaking, I guess I'm kind of like a rock and roll, grunge rock-ish kind of guy. But I mean, it runs from more modern stuff to just weird stuff to old Mississippi Delta blues. Like it's just I have the weirdest Spotify playlist.
I mean, do you get caught up in any new stuff nowadays? Because I don't. These people come out and sing the national anthem and all like that. I'm like, I don't even know who the heck that is.
I'd be more concerned if you knew who some of these people are. Right. No, I don't listen to a lot of top 40 stuff. So it's probably it's just more rock. It's more, I don't know, Foo Fighters, Black Keys, that kind of scene, I guess. But again, my Spotify playlist bounces. I mean, I got Marlena Shaw on there. I got it's all over the place.
Now, I'm to my core, I'm a hard rock, heavy metal, hair metal, guy and all. But listen, and it drives my wife crazy. I like some of the old Bee Gees, Andy Gibb stuff.
Who was that guy last night? You had a tweet about some Sunday night.
The great kid band. Yeah, they were playing that song Jeopardy and all. And I think my wife walks into the room and she
she immediately exits,
wrinkles her nose and all like that. But like old Barry Manilow, even now, and some of that stuff there. She's gagging right now. She's giving the gag sign. But I'm all over the map. But to the core, I'm Motorhead, Metallica, Megadeth, UFO, Black Sabbath, Ozzy.
That doesn't seem all over the map. That seems very much in one corner of the map.
I mean, to the core, that's my core stuff. But I mean, disco stuff there. I'd like some ABBA,
Okay.
I love old ABBA.
Is that rock? Because I know she's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Then there was a big controversy about that, right?
Well, don't get me started on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I know. Your opinions have been made known about their process.
Yeah, I'm not on board with what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been for quite a while now. But old Judas Priest, stuff that I grew up on.
All right. Well, there you go. So
there you go.
We'll trade Spotify playlists and we'll see whose is weirder.
Let's see here.
That implies you have a Spotify playlist. I don't know.
No, I don't.
How do you listen? Do you have an old record, big vinyl? I'm guessing.
No,
is that how
in
you
fact,
listen to your stuff?
I have thought just recently. She's asked me because my best friend was real into vinyl, and he's passed away over 20 years ago now. But he had a huge vinyl collection, and that his widow has passed down that to me and all. And just recently, my wife said, you want one of those new USB turn? When I dive into a hobby like that, I like to go in feet first, and I just, I got close to thinking maybe I wanted a vinyl, get back into listening to vinyl and all like that and all, but I couldn't get myself there. So really nowadays, if I get in the mood now, I just load up the YouTube, to be honest with you, and have that running with some old Alice Cooper, or I go through different artists stages. Just recently I was on a Joan Jett kick and Alice Cooper, and I just get on kicks and I'll pull up the YouTube machine and
now do you pull up the official music video, or are you pulling up like lyrics and you're singing along, or what do you YouTube searches
a mix. I mean either the original videos, or I like to listen to like some of the old live stuff and all.
See, I don't know. Why do people like live music? This is my very big hot take. I don't like live music.
Because a lot of that I experienced. I went to so many concerts, so many plus the ones that I don't remember. Which is a long list of that as well too. I don't know. Like you said, kind of recapturing, times in your life and places that you were and that kind of stuff there. So I like listening to the same song. I'll listen to the same song, either the video version, and then go search out 5 different live versions of it as well.
The thing with concerts, you're going to spend a ton of money to be around a ton of people to listen to a worse quality version of the song, which you could listen to your radio at home for free.
I don't know. Back when I grew up, man,
I guess you couldn't get that stuff.
These bands were tight. Some of the lives, I've been to some live concerts, man, just blow you away.
What's the best concert you've been to that you remember and you can comment about?
Well, there've been a Kiss concert or two that I thought were just great. I mean, Guns N' Roses in their heyday, one of their shows just absolutely, you left it feeling beat up, just it was so powerful and all. Man, I could go down the list. Iron Maiden puts on a hell of a show. Dio, some of the old, back when Dio was famous, some of his live shows. I can remember seeing back when Quiet Riot was just hitting it big again, seeing who was it? Saga. Oh, it was the lineup was Girls' School, Saga, and Quiet Riot. And man, that was an underrated show way back then. So Metallica put on a fantastic live show in their heyday. I mean, I could go down the list, really.
Yeah, I don't know about 90% of those bands, but I'll take your word for it on that one.
And there's a lot of them that I wish I would have seen that, because of the geographical, we would drive all over as close as we could. New Orleans, Tallahassee, on into, Lake City, Florida. You
have like a shag carpeted van. It's like the vibe I'm getting right now.
And we would just load up and go, man. But a lot of good memories from a lot of live shows. All right. Ari Seltzer writes in, hi, Dave and Alex. Been a fan of you guys on Twitter for a while now and started listening to the podcast this offseason to prep for the new post-Ben era of Steelers football. My question is, it's far too early to make a decision one way or the other on Kenny, and last week was encouraging, but the team definitely needs improvement to make it a better place for him or the next guy. How long until the team can really know what Kenny is and what should they focus on improving with their top draft picks over the next few years to try and make the team a contender again? Also, if he and the team bottom out next year and we end up with a top pick, do you think there's a chance they pull the plug on Kenny and go for another top quarterback like Caleb Williams in 2024? Look, I don't even want to get into 2024 yet, but I will tell you this. I think they need to address this offensive line for sure. I think that one or two pieces in there need to be added. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the second tight end position. Zach Gentry's going to be a free agent, unrestricted free agent after this year. They probably could use another wide receiver in here as well, too. So I think things like that can help Kenny, along with Kenny just maturing. As far as the time length goes, I keep throwing out the 20-game thing, man. I think, and look, these final 7 games, I think, are going to paint a pretty good picture as long as they keep the continuity what they have right now with the offensive line and the skill positions and all. And that's why Alex and I kind of drew the line in the sand there a couple of games ago with, all right, we ought to really see some areas that we can hang a hat on here with Kenny. And I think, we saw the some extended play aspect with Kenny in that last game here. I just want to see things that are tangible that we can touch, that we can talk about with Kenny that we didn't see in those first 5 or 6 games that we can talk about when building on into next year. And then about 7 games into next season, I think we'll be at a point where we'll be able to say, yeah, this guy, I think he's going to make it, or no, he's not.
Yeah, I think that's a fair evaluation. Now, if you get through this time next year and Pickett doesn't feel like he's the guy, then sure, I think you open the conversation to a quarterback in 2024, and Caleb Williams will probably be a blue chip top 5, probably number 1 type prospect dude. But I think you give him 2023 and see how that looks and go from there.
Exactly. Let's see here if I got any more.
That it?
Let's see. Happy belated. This is from Ron real quick. Ron Hall. Happy belated Thanksgiving, Dave and Alex. Hope you guys are both feeling better. Nothing worse than being sick or in pain for the holidays, guys. I got to see a lot of Matty Ice firsthand growing up in Massachusetts as a Boston College alumni. I couldn't be prouder of all that he's been able to accomplish in the NFL. It's so interesting that the Steelers are playing the Colts this week because Kenny reminded me so much of Matt Ryan. When I watched him play in college, everything looked the same: his accuracy, arm strength, mobility, and leadership qualities. I know you guys are not into player comps, especially once the season has started, but I'm curious if you think Kenny will have similar success as Matt has had in the NFL, or NFL Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, multiple Pro Bowls, and even NFL MVP realistic possibilities for a quarterback like Kenny Pickett. I think it's too early to tell on any of that. Right now. I think Ron says, I think he can be, and I think it will happen quickly, just like it did for Matty Ice. Just curious to get both your thoughts about the ceiling for Kenny looks like. I think we're starting to see some instances of maybe what a ceiling is for him, right? Or no?
Well, like you said, it's still probably pretty early to even think about what those ceilings are. Again, my thought of Pickett coming out was, best case scenario, he's probably a top 10 quarterback in the league, kind of that Derek Carr-esque type player. And I still generally stand by that. The Matt Ryan comp, I get that. That makes sense. Maybe Pickett was a bit more mobile, but, trying to think back to Ryan when he came out, probably, I'm sure, had more mobility than he does right now in his age, 37 season. So yeah, that's probably fair overall. And I would love that to be the career arc just in terms of the talent and longevity and consistency. So sure. But, will he get there I'm just taking it game by game. That's really my focus instead of thinking about all that big picture stuff.
I think some of the biggest strides we might can see with Kenny is once he sees more what's happening across from him and understanding and being able to win cerebrally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Again, I think asking those questions about the long-term impact and ceiling and value of Pickett is important. I don't want to downplay that, but those are things I think about after the season ends, when there is no more tape to put out for that current year and you're heading into your offseason, building your roster and your vision for how do you win in 2023 and beyond. And so that's when I'll really sit down and think about Pickett in terms of what did this rookie season look like in totality. When you're in the season, I'm just kind of really focused on the week-to-week type stuff.
What I'd really like to see Monday night is his most complete game of the season. Not turning the football over, making good decisions when maybe take off with the football, a couple of shots downfield and hitting them that way, some to the middle of the field. Like to see him in that 12 to 15 yard mark, more in the middle of the field. Probably not going to see him play a lot against the blitz, but make sure you handle that stuff and you're not confused with that free runner off the edge like that. Just more of a properly managing the game in between as well too. None of these stupid late delay games. Just really like to see us be able to talk on Tuesday about, man, that was a good complete game from Kenny.
Sure, absolutely. Because if we're talking about that, odds are very high. We're talking about that was a good complete game by Kenny in a win over the Colts, and we're all a little bit happier.
All right, Alex, I know a lot. We need to get this up so people can listen to it before the game. So let's draw the line. I think we got through most of the emails anyway. There as well. So with that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, we have an ad-free version of the site available by clicking the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar as well too. Alex and I will be back on Tuesday morning with a recap. Hopefully, we're recapping a Steelers win, but regardless, we'll recap this on Tuesday in a podcast, and we'll see what the rest of the week holds for us as well too, because Tuesday, I think there's Mike Tomlin Tuesday on top of there that we have to work around as well too. So if we do a Tuesday podcast, just a warning, it might be a little bit later in the afternoon, Alex, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll figure it out. Just keep refreshing, however you listen to us, and we'll get a recap out there for you guys.
All right. Everybody stay safe. Thanks for listening. As always, thanks for listening to The Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.